Just having a look at the championship standings after 5 of the 13 rounds, and Marcus Ambrose has pole position this afternoon. It is a great opportunity to gain an advantage on those who are closest to him. Rick Kelly is second in the championship but starts 24th today. Greg Murphy there in 4th place. He's the leading New Zealander, but he is another one who's down the order starting 23rd. A very good day for Team Kiwi yesterday, making the top 10 shootout. Craig Baird starting 10th. Other New Zealanders in the top 10 are Simon Wills, who starts 7th, and Paul Radisich, who starts 9th this afternoon. So no doubt that Marcus Ambrose, Queensland, Bill Woods, Neil Crompton. In the pits will be Greg Rust and Daryl Beattie.
These cars prior to the race start to commemorate the Bring Epilepsy Out of the Shadows, Turn Your Lights On campaign. There they are. It is to show support for the 75,000 Queenslanders. That's 2% of the population who are affected by epilepsy. A great cause, and we're very grateful to the drivers for supporting it. Here is a recap of the grid, Neil, and the proximity of the times in regular qualifying shows we're in for a heck of a race if they can keep that up over the race distance.
No question about that, Billy. And the 4th time that Marcus Ambrose has grabbed a pole position, 4th time in a row from Scapey, Kelly, Richards. And it's an interesting grid the way they line up, and there's a couple of people buried further down that you might not expect to see there. There's Jason Bright, Russell Ingles, Simon Wills, good job again in the top 10. John Bowe, 8th for Aussie Mail. Paul Radisich, Craig Baird, outstanding job yesterday to poke the Team Kiwi car into the top 10. Wheel, Tander's up there as well. Ellery, Winterbottom, Wilson and Luff, who had a bit of trouble finding the circuit this morning, Luffy. Then Paul Dumbrell, Stephen Johnson, Jason Bargwana, Mark Noski is next. David Bernard, who had some engine problems over the course of the weekend but overcame them for 21st. Paul Morris with a lot of understeer in his car. Brad Jones, Glenn Seaton, Craig Lowndes, the 2 FPR cars, 26 and 7. And they've certainly had some difficulties trying to find the appropriate setup. Jason Richards, Traddy is next. Neil McFadden making an appearance in the Imrie Motorsport entry but driving a Team Dynamic Holden. And further down to Tony Longhurst, and then Garth Walden. David Krause did not qualify within the 105% qualifying regulation. Now, some dramas here for Mark Scaife in the number 2 Holden Racing Team Commodore. And see if we can get an update from Greg Rust as to precisely what's going on here.
Neil, just quickly, other teams are warning their drivers to be conscious of the fact that this could be a sticking throttle. It's not. I've had a word to Rob Starr just a moment ago. He said it's a piece of ducting hosing designed to bring some air in toward the engine to keep it cool. They've just remounted it. Things are okay with car 2.
They don't need that kind of upset just prior to the start of the race, though. It puts everybody on edge. It's unsettling for the driver. Change of format, 280 kilometres this race, 2 compulsory pit stops, 1 for tyres, 1 for fuel. You'll need just under 200 litres of fuel to get the job done here. We're set for a start.
The roar of the V8s hits Queensland Raceway, and a brilliant start for Marcus Ambrose on home turf. In fact, Mark Scaife on the front row with him will be beaten to the first corner by his teammate Todd Kelly, who sliced through. Stephen Richards with a great start as well, and Ingle hunting them down from just behind the top 4.
Scaife made a reasonable jump initially and then bogged it down, but chaos at turn 2 or on the 1 into 2. And you can see that somebody's buried right in the middle of the pack there. 4 or 5 cars involved, and this will be a safety car. Bowe and Murphy. Remember, Murphy was a long way down. Dale Breed's in there as well, and I think that's Stephen Ellery in the background. And we have gone full course yellow on the opening lap of this 90-lap journey. So there is Ellery, confirmed, and Murphy. Greg.
Guys, just quickly, Stephen Ellery's already been on the radio to the team. He's claiming that Bowe moved across on him on the run into the turn, and that's what's perhaps kicked this whole thing off.
There's some anger in those cockpits. Interesting point, though, Neil. When they went off, tremendous amount of dust from a very dry infield and indeed outfield here, which means that some of the guys would have been obscured as they went round. If one car goes off,
it's like a desert out there at the moment. And in fact, we've seen evidence of fires over the weekend with people going off the road. And huge damage to John Bowe's car, the front right, very second hand.
That is such a shame, because he has not been up the front of the field after qualifying too often. Let's have another look.
Scapey made an ordinary start. Todd goes through. Stephen Richards slots in, and Russell's lurking around looking for a way through, and so was Jason Bright. But it was further down the order. Look for John Bowe. And yes, John Bowe makes contact with Ellery, and then the rest of the paddock all ducking every which way. And when you're buried in the middle of that, Billy, you don't know what you're dealing with. There's cars going everywhere, and Breed actually manages to go off the road and clouts Ellery in the cloud.
Well, that's the point I was talking about. So much dust. Breed was completely unsighted there. I guess He would have tried to slow down, but it would be easy when you're off the tarmac and on the grass.
Ooh, that's awkward contact there with one of the shell cars tripping over the back of John Bow's entry. Another replay here, and you can see that they're all looking for a way around the mess, and there's just nowhere to go in the middle of the pack, and it just triggers one of those awkward shunts, and with that much dust and smoke flying, you can't see. Greg?
Just down here with Stephen Johnson, part of the exhaust has broken off. Such is the impact in this crash. The whole muffler has come away from it, so car 17 sounds very loud. The crews are telling him to shut it down by the sounds of it. Enormous damage down the passenger side of the car, so quite a heavy hit for Steve Johnson.
Well, one of the big problems with these 300k races, and we talked about this at length beforehand, was that if you are out of the race with major damage, you do not get a second chance. That is the case perhaps for Stephen Johnson, certainly for Dale Breed here. Greg Murphy, John Bow, without doubt, will not get another chance. We've just come through a series of rounds where we saw at various times drivers fight their way back through a sequence of races after having problems. Yeah, wheels there. Can't see any obvious damage, but just from that angle. But this seems to generate a high attrition rate here in Queensland, although we didn't expect it to be so soon.
Just incidentally, those that did manage to get through, I'll rattle out for you. Ambrose, Todd Kelly, Stephen Richards is third, Mark Scaife, Russell Ingall, Jason Bright, Simon Wills seventh, Craig Baird eighth, Radisish, Tander. Paul Wheel was noted as 11th, but he's not there. But we'll take the opportunity to grab a break while they sort all this out and come back, hopefully go racing in Queensland. You're watching round 6 of the championship here on Network 10, your home of motorsport.
Product that offers this many features. X-Pol underfloor insulation. Feel the warmth with a...
Queensland 300, the Australians are still in their commercial break, which gives us the chance to bring in John McIntyre. And John, you called it before the race, turns 1 and 2, always difficult.
Well, it was a bit of a lucky call, I guess, but yeah, I mean, that's the first opportunity for things to go wrong. You can see Murph qualifying 23rd, you know, he had nowhere to go. And it's often the way in these races, one incident right up the front, and then it takes out 5 or 6 cars.
Major disappointment for Greg Murphy, because really, if you look at the championship table, there's only 5 drivers. Even though we're not even halfway through the season, you'd have to say there are only 5 drivers with a chance of winning the championship. Murph was one of them.
That's right. It's starting to thin out already at this stage, and they don't have last year's system where you can claim back your worst round. Every round counts. All I can say that's good as I did see 2 WPS cars carry on through all that dust.
There's John Bow, and we did hear apparently Steve Ellery getting onto his radio and claiming that Bow had cut across him, but really cars going everywhere in that dust, you've got no chance, have you?
Not really, no. 35 cars funneling into that first turn. I don't think there's too much blame to be had there. I'm sure we'll see some replays.
There's Marcus Ambrose, who got away to a fantastic start.
Yeah, no, he certainly was straight out of the box, and you can see here that Scaife balked, and that may have just been a concertina down at turn 1 here. The cars are probably already reaching 160, 170k before they go in there on the brakes. And, yeah, someone's tried to make a pass, and there we go. It's all over.
As we concentrate on the action, which has seen Greg Murphy out of this race after the first couple of corners. Record crowd in at the Queensland Raceway, 45,000 fans. And they're making quite a big deal of that, although Pukekohe, of course, gets quite close to that, 40,000. But 45,000 at the Queensland Raceway. And what a start we've had. Greg Murphy gone. Looks like John Bow gone as well. Steve Johnson had to come in. We had a shot of Paul Wheel, who was stationary as well. So we're still under yellow. But really, you look at that, and there's just no way through.
Not at all. And some of the guys will be ruining their performances in qualifying, and they know that. And Murph will be the first one to put his hand up and say they didn't do a good enough job in qualifying, and that's why he's ended up in the pack.
John Bow was in the top 10 in qualifying, but Murph starting 23, and Rick Kelly second in the championship. He was well back as well, although it would seem as though he's come through okay. That, I would assume, is Steve Ellery. Steve Ellery's car being towed away. So we've had Ellery, we've had Bow, we've had Murphy, all not getting through the first couple of corners. And we just wait now for this race to restart with Marcus Ambrose. It really does all seem to be falling into place for him and Stone Brothers Racing.
Well, I think their preparation's probably second to none, and you know, they've got great car speed as well, and they're just such a well-drilled team. I've seen them at a couple of test days now, and everything's done well. They practice pit stops all during the day, and you know, I think they just cover all their bases. They're very good drivers, and you know, success breeds success.
Marcos Ambrose, just had a shot of him there in the car. This is the Stone Brothers testing track, starting on pole position. He knows this circuit so well, and it is going to be very hard for the Holdens in particular, who are chasing in the championship, to take points off Ambrose this afternoon. As again, we see the start, and there's Marcos Ambrose on the left of our screen. He got away very, very well. Mark Scaife, though, some problems, and we saw that at Pukekohe too in race 1. He just had a lot of trouble getting off the grid.
Well, I think Scaife's just having one of those years where nothing is going right, and then you start doubting yourself as a driver, and things like that happen, and you have bad starts and the pressure mounts. You see their bows just about to be clouted.
Well, it's ugly whichever way you look at it, and very, very difficult once that dust comes across the track. You've got no chance of staying on the track or going off. You've just really got no idea where to go.
And there's nowhere to go.
Now, I can tell you, too, as far as New Zealand drivers are concerned over there, Fabian Coulthard, racing in the Carrera Cup, finished third, qualified second, so he's having a good weekend at the Queensland Raceway. You cannot say the same for John Bowe, whose race over almost before it started, and the same for Greg Murphy, the same for Steve Ellery as well. As the car's still under yellow, Marcos Ambrose leading them through. And what is it about Stone Brothers Racing, do you think, John? What is it about them? They've been able to get something out of the Ford BA Falcon that other Ford teams have not.
I think a lot of it comes down to Jim Stone. He's a real technical, engineering-wise, he's absolutely world-class, and they've been working at it for a long time. It hasn't just come overnight, and I think you'll find that actually the Holdens are now a little bit better suited to the double wishbone front end, and that's why we've got so many Holdens this year right up the front, and you've only really got the one Ford team up there, which is Stone Brothers. So I think they're just doing the best job out there. They've got excellent engine power, but you know, they're putting in the right amount of effort and energies.
Well, they certainly are, but then Marcos Ambrose is able to get more out of it than Russell Ingall.
Yes. Well, we don't want to go into personal battles on drivers, but yeah, Ambrose, he certainly does. He does seem to do the job over Ingall, and you'd imagine they'd give them pretty similar gear as well. So it's probably a fair comment.
So they're just clearing away John Bowe's car now. Once we're clear of that, we'll be able to get the racing underway again. Round 6 of the V8 Supercar Championship, the Queensland 300, I should say. Used to be the 5, now the 3. This whet your appetite for later in the season, driving at Sandown and Bathurst? Oh,
absolutely. Yep, I'm just going to keep an eye on that car 48 and make sure that's nice and straight by the end of the weekend. I've got a few nervous rounds to watch. One thing that's interesting there is they would have tried to clear, obviously, the cars and some of the debris that's come off, but there will still be a lot of dirt and small stones that have come off onto the track, and that might also, you know, that might cause a problem for a few laps. There might be one line through there.
As you were saying before, the race turns 1 and 2 are difficult anyway. Once you've got all that dirt and debris there, you're going to have to be very delicate getting through there.
That's right. And during the day, as you enter pit lane, they've got a compulsory tyre and fuel stop. By the time you've got into the pits, there's a lot of marbles in there.
All right, as we look at a replay now of the start, let's return to our Australian commentary team in Queensland.
Well, you have to feel for some of these drivers after a brilliant start. The front of the field, fiercely competitive. Further down, there was chaos as John Bowe and Stephen Ellery came together. JB was due for a good result. He's been very high up in the championship. He is now out of the race. Massive cloud dust created by those early collisions, and that caused a few more. Stephen Johnson copped some nasty damage there. Warren Luff neatly evaded it, went to the other side of the track. The junior has parked his car with some damage, among others Greg Murphy, I think, with Greg Rust.
Well, Greg Murphy, this is not the way you wanted to start the Queensland race.
Well, no, that happened yesterday when I qualified 23rd, mate. So that's what happens when you're that far back in the field. So, you know, what do you expect?
Paint a picture. What happened when you got there?
Oh, I have no idea. It was obviously someone had been turned around. There was cars going everywhere, and there was just dust and crap everywhere, and then all I saw was JB, and I, there's nowhere to go. So I've done all the damage on him, unfortunately.
There's a bit of haste here about the team. You're obviously going to get back out there and try and salvage some points here.
Oh yeah, I mean it's pretty pointless, but at the end of the day, you need to finish, and if you can get 5 points, you never know at the end of the championship, it might count for something. But as I say, that's what happens when you qualify at the back of the field.
Tough break, Murph. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
7 laps now they've travelled, and only a few hundred metres at full capacity.
One corner. 6 cars knocked out or around in some way, shape or form, Bill. And there's a portion of the monster crowd we've got here. They were queued up from before 7 o'clock this morning on the way into the track. 13,000 more than last year, we understand, and the total cumulative for the weekend so far, 70,000 people. So it's an outstanding crowd for round 6 of the championship. Those that were knocked out on turn 1, John Bower, Steve Ellery, Dale Breed, Stevie Johnson, Greg Murphy, and obviously Paul Wheel copped some damage as well. Let's go back downstairs to Darryl.
Yes, Neil, it was interesting listening to Marcus on the sighting lap prior to pulling up on the grid, and he mentioned that the car had more steer. They'd made some adjustments to it, but he was worried that it was going to turn taily through the race. They talked about changing on the grid. He was talking about the rear bar. They didn't, so it looks like they're going to do what they usually do and do it on the run with that car, and it gets better and better.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we need to watch carefully in this event as it unfolds is just the way the cars behave. We've moved away now from the 3 sprint races where it's high intensity, and this is all about making sure that you're there when it counts in the last blast of the flag. If there's a series of pace cars, and you've got to make sure that you've got the car balance for the distance. Much more strategy involved in these races, in the management of tyres and fuel, and how much weight you carry and how you divide the segments of this race.
On that subject, we saw Brad Jones come in for a tyre change during the yellow flag, Neil, which is unusual. I'm not sure if he was the only car that did that.
I'm sure there are a few people that probably picked up flat spots in an effort to try and avoid all the chaos, and there could be others with stone damage. You never know. There's so many things unfolding in the first couple of 100 metres. 7 cars carrying onboard cameras for us this weekend in our Network 10 coverage, including Stevie Richards, and there's Steve Johnson. I believe they changed the shock absorber and a bunch of other panel damage to get that Shell Helix car back out. Rusty.
Yeah, they've done exactly that. Car 17 back on the circuit. I just had a word to some of the crew down here, and they've replaced the muffler, Neil. The exhaust was quite badly damaged in that side hit, and the left rear shock absorber was the one that was broken. They've replaced that as well.
It was an awkward trip over when he was trying to get down the inside there in the dirt and the grass. Well, probably call it grass straw, isn't it? And he just tripped over the front of the Aussie Mail car, and very frustrating for him. Home track, they had some successful testing here recently.
They're turning the lights out on the safety car, Steve. They're turning the lights out on the safety car.
Which means that we will go racing next lap. And it's a furrowed brow on Stephen Johnson when you're this far behind, and they've had probably a pretty high expectation for the Shell Helix team for this weekend. Don't forget tonight also round 10 of the World Formula One Championship, where Renault's Fernando Alonso is on pole position. Michael Schumacher shares the front row, 0.3 of a second down.
Yes, Steve qualified 18th, which I'm sure they'd be disappointed with given the pace they showed in recent testing and their familiarity with the circuit. Dick, in fact, played a very big role in the development of this place. As we scroll through the grid positions for tonight's French Formula One Grand Prix, Mark Webber will be coming up pretty soon.
Rob Crawford in consultation there with Greg, who's got the gear back on, so any tick of the clock, Murph will slot back into the cockpit and they'll get that car out. And it's important because the way the events are structured, and depending on what other things unfold this afternoon, you may well come away with some points. And many times in motor racing over the years in vital championships, we've seen them come down to a handful of points here and there. We are racing once more. Let's see if we can get more than a couple of corners done this time as the green flag flies for turn 1.
Look how bumpy that main straight is, and the drivers have all said it gets bumpier every season. Lots of muck on the circuit there on the inside. Todd Kelly in hot pursuit of Marcus Ambrose, who's already pinched a little break. Kelly with a heap of cars jammed up behind him. Stephen Richards, Mark Scaife, Russell Ingall, Jason Bright.
what makes it awkward up there into turn 3, Bill, is the magnitude of the bump there is such that it really unsettles the car, and it's extremely easy to lock the unweighted, the inside front tyre. The problem is when you're having a go at somebody like Stephen's trying to do on Todd, and Mark's trying to, as we look at Cam McConville off the road here, as Mark is also having a look at the back of Richo, you need that extra little bit of braking aggression in one of the few passing spots here, and you need it at turn 3. Now, if you do poke the car up there half a car length further, you make yourself very prone to damaging that front tyre if you get it wrong in any way. Marcus opening a gap, great speed from that car in not only this race meeting, but typically in recent race meetings. Marcus and the Stone brothers have got a real handle on how to get the most out of the machinery here. 11.9 the lap time for Marcus Ambrose, and Todd Kelly, by way of comparison, 13 flat, 13.3 for Stevie Richards, 13.6 for Mark Scaife. And look at the amount of garbage on the road there between turns 1 and 2. Oh, HRT car badly out of shape there. That was Scaife. You don't want it oversteering like that so early in the race, and Ingle uses that opportunity and tries to position himself down the inside on the dirty bit of road, and Scaife has no part of that at all. Drives straight down the inside, and Russell will have to find another way.
The car's still pretty heavy with fuel here. Different behaviour.
Scaife will probably grab a bit of a adjustment on the anti-roll bars, either front or rear or both, to just try and tidy up the car. The tyre pressures may not have normalised, or they may just in fact have a car setup or balance issue where it wants to get into oversteer too quickly. And you've got to make your car pretty pointy. That is, you've got to make your car turn well in the front to get a decent time out of it in qualifying, but that's not a characteristic you want as Murphy rejoins this motor race with a heavy amount of race tape on the front left corner of the Kmart car. I'll bet she needs a wheel alignment, but it's the last thing they can do at the moment. And he's out and about, which is important.
A view back from Scaife's car of Russell Ingle.
Ambrose, Kelly, Richards, Scaife, Ingle, Bright. Ingle applying big pressure to Scaife. Behind Brighty, it's Wills, Baird, Tander, Winterbottom, Dumbrell, Radisich, Luff, Bargwana, Wilson, Morris, Kelly, Bernard, Lowndes. Big recovery to 19th from 27th, aided by the number of cars that went out at turn 1, lap 1.
Stephen Richards in that top group has pinched more than a second break on Scaife now, but the other significant move has been Ambrose away from the front of the field. 1.99 seconds at the head. He's gaining slowly. Let's go back to the pits.
Well, Greg Murphy's damage was the left steering arm on that car. They repaired that, and a bit of panel damage. The left front wheel and tyre that was seriously damaged. A new green front's gone on the left-hand front. A flat spotted one went on the right-hand side, so it's got a bit of a mixed match. The team's saying he's going to do 1 lap. He'll be back in. They'll do the compulsory tyre change, and he'll be back in the race.
Gee, Todd's car looks like a bit of a handful there. He was well wide of the mark up at turn 6. There are a lot of varying opinions on race lines at turn 6, but it didn't look like a comfortable car for him. It took him a long time to return grip to the front of it then and get it back online. I saw him in the truck just before the start of the race, and he and his engineer Matt Crawford were still scratching their heads on trying to get the setup right for this car. It's quite amazing, Billy. You look at the layout and you say, well, this is going to be a pretty simple racetrack to deal with, but it's just not. The characteristic of the bumps here at turn 3, we're on board now with Russell, and also into 1, and then these really tight corners, second and third gear kind of corners that punish the rear tyre, and those 2 quick ones at 1 and 2, it really becomes a head scratch as to what level of compromise you make. And you have to work out what benefits your style and your car most at this track, and deal heavily with compromise here.
Looks like Jason Ackermanis turning up. Big motorsport fan, having a chat with some of the guys.
Craig Kelly runs HRT and a noted footballer himself.
Now, Ingle here is trying to get past Scaife, and Richards is trying to get past Todd Kelly. They're the 2 focal points of the race at the moment. Richards must feel as though there's a bit of urgency here. Ambrose getting away.
Mechanical black flag for Paul Morris, car number 29, so there's an issue with that car. Murphy's in, so this car's uncomfortable for some reason. Darryl?
Yeah, guys, this is the stop I spoke about. Greg Murphy, when he rejoined a lap ago, they were going to bring him in. He had a bit of a mixed match on the front, like I said, with tyres, but now he's back in the race, but well down on laps.
So they've ticked off their compulsory stop and probably got a matching set now just to tidy all that up, and they just need to circulate now and see what comes of it. The fastest lap so far in 11.7 for Marcus Ambrose. What was impressive there, Bill, was that The first flying lap that he did was an 11.9, so he was straight on the pace, and the best the others were doing at that point was a low 13. So when you give the rest of them a belting to the tune of over a second on your first flying lap, you know you're dealing with a pretty good car.
The lead last time they passed the start-finish line was 2.6 seconds. Of course, it's close between Kelly and Richards. A gap of 1.2 seconds to Scaife, who's trying to hold off Ingle and Bright. And then another gap to Simon Wills.
There's the reason for the black flag for Paul Morris. So it's the lower part of the skirt of the rear bumper assembly of the Sirame Wines entry. So frustrating. Somebody else would have belted into the back of it, probably in all that action at turn 1. And Morris, who had a bit of a battle in qualifying with that car, will have to come in and have it dealt with and torn away. And here he is now.
Tested here since the latest round at Barbagallo.
You there, Hito?
Best result of the season was here last year. Qualified third and finished fourth. In the last 3 rounds, he's had a lot of bad luck, Paul Morris. He dropped from 7th early in the championship to 19th.
Order at the moment: Ambrose, Kelly, Richards, Scaife, Ingle, Bright. Things are just settling a little bit now. And it looks like both the HRT boys have managed to tidy up their cars and find some rhythm. They looked a bit like a handful in the first couple of laps. Garth Tander running well. Spoke to him on Friday, and he talked at length about the fact that they've gone back to a pretty basic setup with this car. They've sacrificed most of their development from the last 12 months, and Paul Wheel, a disappointed onlooker. Hey, Wheelie.
He had the flu earlier this week, and he's just recovered from that, so hasn't been too good for him.
Lights go on for Garth, and he's signalling to Craig Baird that he's got pace. He wants him to see him and give him a bit of space, and generally the bloke in front looks at that and goes, that's nice, your lights work.
There's the gap. Ambrose to Todd Kelly. Still Stephen Richards in third place. The gap now 3.2 seconds. And a 1:11.75 is still Ambrose fastest lap. Just looking through the top 10, some interesting runners up there. Simon Wills, who of course was in the shootout. Craig Baird, who has also involved himself in the shootout for the first time this season and is maintaining that pace. Garth Tander and Mark Winterbottom is up to the top 10 from 14th position on the grid. Paul Radicic and Paul Dumbrell are just behind him. Ambrose, a 50-point championship lead. And don't forget, in the West, as Warren Luff exits the track ever so gently, finds his way back on. And there is a problem there with Barguana's car, I think. He's slipping back through the order dramatically. Let's have another look. Luff and Barguana side by side.
Doesn't look pretty. And it also involves one of the Triple Eight cars. I think that was Max Wilson
taking evasive action.
Can't actually quite work out where they've done this. I think it's the run to turn 4.
Rick Kelly was almost caught up in that as well, but he managed to get around him.
And tell you what, Barks is very lucky that that thing didn't trip over there, because if he'd caught a ripple strip or with the sort of angle he had on the car, he could well have ended up on his roof down there. But fortunately, they skate away to talk about it.
Those tyres will be in tremendous shape, won't they?
Yeah.
Marcus Ambrose now still 3.3 seconds. Let's go back to pit lane.
Billy Barguana's car is not well. They've thrown fresh rubber at it, but the crew was singing out to themselves as Jason was actually driving out of pit lane that the front left tyre is not at all well. It's pointing quite dramatically toward the front of the car, so a lot of toe in for Barguana's machine. He's having trouble even steering it out of pit lane.
Yeah, he's just going to take it down the end. It's a handful. He's got some sort of drama. It's either seriously bent or something's broken after that contact with Warren Luff. And he's trying to get it off to a safe position here, and he'll struggle around to try and get it back to the pit lane. At one point, I think he was contemplating actually parking it then, but he feels like he's got reasonable control over the car and it's relatively safe. We want to get it back and get it repaired.
He's performed better in the longer races this year too, Barks. 5th in Adelaide in race 2 and 8th at Eastern Creek. That was the wet one. but no luck here. And we keep saying it, it's a punishing event, and it's very hard to come back when there are no second chances. We'll take a break for the Queensland 300.
You didn't hit anyone.
Thanks, Joseph.
Thanks.
And more problems for Stephen Richards that time as he came off turn 2 and the car looked very unstable. So he's battling a little bit of evil in that car right at the moment. And again, this can be the pattern at this racetrack, Billy. You often in practice here, because we have very limited time in the cars in the lead up to these events, often you'll find that when you start to string a few laps together, particularly with a heavy fuel load, if they've gone for 120 litres, you're talking about just under 100 kilos of fuel in the back of the thing, and it can really change not only the balance of the car, but the degradation of the rear tyres, and completely change the way the car behaves. You've got to drive it differently around here and coax it around this track, and it doesn't take much.
Wary of those front tyres. If you feel any vibration, let us know.
It's just millimetres, tiny little adjustments, a click here on shock absorbers or maybe one spring race, just tiny little incremental changes, but if you get it wrong, it can really burn you on this track.
Total amount of fuel required for this race, 190 litres, although there'd be a bit less than that now because we had 6 or 7 laps under the safety car, but definitely the fuel stop required, as we see a little moment there, just enough to unbalance the car.
Yeah, and that was Scapey just getting crossed up at very late in the stop, and a lot of people starting to seemingly struggle with brakes. We had a report just prior to the start of the race of an ambient temperature of 29 degrees and a track of 33, and as the tyres get a little bit greasy and as the track starts to get a little bit more of this garbage on, a bit of oil here and there, and people bringing a bit of dust on from these incidents, and you're at maximum braking potential at the end. And what happens also sometimes, Billy, is that the rear brake temperature can grow a bit awkwardly to the point where they get too efficient right at the wrong time and they'll stop on you and you'll slide into the corner, and that'll give the other competitor a real incentive to have a lunch. Let's go back down to the pit lane.
Well, Neil, there's a bloke down here in civvies who really probably would prefer not to be in civvies, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
What happened?
Actually, I was quite looking forward to the race because the car's been pretty good this week. I think it was just, as quite often happens, somebody's trying to win the race on the first lap, in this case the first corner. I mean, it's a 300k race, so generally you would think that there'd be a bit of common sense applied, but not so.
How's the car, John?
Pretty badly damaged. I was trying to actually get it back here, but it's really, I mean, it's, once I got spun around, obviously everyone's got nowhere to go, and I got punched, bored and drilled by everybody, so it's pretty sorry sight. The guys are going to have to work pretty hard.
You've got some spare time on your hands. Might have a gig for you in the commentary box.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, mate.
I'm a better driver than a commentator, I think.
Daz?
Well, Paul Wheel, what happened with your car?
Mate, by the looks of it, I think it's some sort of clutch problem. We got off the line really good and got down into turn 1 and it just lost all drive. And so we're still not quite sure. We got the guys from Alcon here from England, and they're not quite sure neither. So it's just something, one of those things that we'll have to pull apart and have a look at when we get back to the workshop. But yeah, go and get a suntan now, go to the beach.
How long does an item like that normally last, race miles?
Mate, usually mileage on them is probably 3 races. Ours are done 1 race, so it is probably a problem or something's failed. So it's just one of those things that does happen in this sport, unfortunately. Does.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Alcon is a specialist racing equipment supplier based in the UK. They make brake calipers and disc rotors, clutches for various racing categories. Lowndes looks pretty racy up the inside here of Rick Kelly. He now moves to 14th position.
And he started 27th.
And his buddy Glenn Seaton's going with him. He's only a couple of car lengths behind, so they'll be looking at each other's cars, and little hand signals will be going there. They were considering a pretty tough qualifying in pretty good spirits just before the start of the race. They were quite relaxed, and both men have seen a lot of racing over a long period of time, and so they know how to deal with the ups and downs of this business.
They qualified for the first time in a top 10 shootout in Perth, but had all kinds of trouble during the race, not the least of which was engine failure.
I have to say, Billy, and I'm sure you spotted it, but earlier when we were doing our RPM program...
We're just worried about the engine temp, but it's starting to come down, so keep going, mate.
Just the message there is just try and get a bit of fresh air to the front of that car. And just on the high-spirited Craig Lowndes, he was standing behind our cameraman when we were doing our RPM cross, and I can't begin to tell you the sort of nonsense that he was trying to throw at us to see whether or not he could break our concentration. So I might just go down to the side of the track now and do a couple of things on the pit wall and see if I can get his attention.
Yeah, not a bad idea, that. Rick Kelly, Lowndes and Seaton 14th through to 16th there, but Marcus Ambrose has a firm hold on this race at the moment. His lead nearly 5 seconds now from Todd Kelly, who has pinched a break on Scaife, but there is a traffic jam behind him. Ingle and Bright fighting hard. Stephen Richards has lost a couple of seconds on that group. There's Marcus.
4.9 seconds last time through, and Russell's in.
Square road, mate. The
position.
Right in, so pull the car on the square on the mark as close as you can. This change will get you out to some clear road. You can make up the gap again.
Accuracy is the thing in the pit lane, and you can see the surface change.
The first 5 or 6 laps, you need to go hard.
Daryl's going to be on the spot. All yours, mate.
Okay.
Well, Neil, as he gets a clear run here, no cars in front of him. Nice alignment here. This should be a trick stop from a team that trains really hard. The wheel changes a little slow on the left front here. Wheels only this time around. Car down. I get about 7.5 seconds for Russell Ingle.
The message from Phil Keed at the same time as Russell Ingle came into pit lane was, Jason Bright, make sure you make maximum advantage of this. He said you've got to do some really fast laps while Russell's in pit lane.
Yeah, he was suggesting I need a couple of blinders here, Bridie. So Bright in 4th position. If you can make a 10th or 2 here or there, and we see these little strategic games where track position becomes king. Ambrose, Todd Kelly, Mark Scaife, Jason Bright, Stephen Richards, Garth Tander having a pretty reasonable run, Simon Wills, Craig Baird, Mark Winterbottom inside the 10, Paul Dumbrell, who after the last race in Western Australia went off to race school overseas in Rob Wilson's race school just to try and work out his game a little bit and streamline a couple of finer points in his driving. And commendable when a young bloke says, okay, there's some stuff I need to learn, things I need to concentrate on, and he's trying to address it.
You can see from the attitude of Bridie's car there that he's trying to address his race position under instructions from pit lane, as we see Garth Tander, Neil just mentioned, in 6th position. Another strong performance brewing for him if he can keep it going. Garth qualified 12th.
He's starting to light up a bit of pressure here on Wills, and the point I was going to make earlier is that they have really sacrificed their development in the recent past and gone back and installed really an old setup in this car that they've had virtually 12 months earlier, and they're starting to make a little bit of progress again. He feels comfortable in the car, and obviously when you're running around inside the top 10 in 6th in his case at the moment, then that verifies that they have made progress again. They need it.
Well, his best result of the season was 3rd in the wet at Eastern Creek, but on a dry track it was clearly in the latest round at Barbagallo. 5th and 6th in the sprints, and that certainly supports what Neil was just saying about that car. Jason Bright now, has he made up enough time? This will be a very interesting pit stop. He went for it. He's coming in.
It just seems like an eternity here when you're just hanging on the limit of very tiny throttle percentage, something less than 15%. Rusty's on the spot.
Jason Bright in. This is 4 brand new tyres coming onto car 50. Bit of chat around pit lane here at the moment, Neil, regarding fuel strategy. Again, it depends on how much you've started with, but some suggesting around lap 30, lap 35 for the earlier stops for fuel.
Where's Russell Ingle? Jason is about to exit pit lane. And there's Russell Ingle. He's going to be too quick for Jason, who could not build up enough speed from there. So Jason's lost position. But a very delicate sprinkling of pit stops at the moment in this very big window over the 280 kilometres. Bright looking here to hunt down Neil McFadden, the one-off driver in this race. One of 3 Team Dynamic cars in for this weekend, and Jason rounds him up fairly quickly, does he? No, not quite. He may well do on this corner, and he does. On that note, we'll take a break.
Garth Tander is 2nd.
But getting back to that, Neil, you run a little blocker in the front which stores the air in it, which gives them a bit more downforce. But today, I think it's hotter than everybody thought it would be. So they've probably got an issue with the temperature.
Darryl Beattie.
Yes, that was a slow stop as because of that adjustment on the freight JB was just talking about. In qualifying, they normally run a bigger one in there for the downforce. That was a small one and still getting hot, but 19.6 seconds.
Yeah, it looked like it was a bit hard to drag it out of there, and right at the moment, a little bit of extra downforce is not what they need. They need to pull the water temperature down in the engine, and obviously there's been some engine issues with FPR, and they don't need another one today. They need to get the car home and get some points in this championship. They've been working hard in the last couple of weeks to overcome their engine dramas as the Team Dynamic car is in for its service. Lowndes actually turned 30. Settle down, Oski. You're starting to sound a bit excited. Lowndesy turned 30 in the last week. He's getting old.
It's amazing, isn't it? I can remember when he was, you know, little, almost a boy bouncing around the pits when he made his debut. He made a fairly big impact on them immediately, didn't he?
The fastest bloke in the race at the moment is Jason Bryden, 11.6. He's down in 14th position after taking that set of tyres in the PWR car.
Quite a variety of strategies here, which has really shaken up the field. The top 8 cars have not made a stop yet. Interestingly, Marcus Ambrose has fed himself back into the field in 9th position ahead of Tony Longhurst, who's yet to make a stop. Simon Wills here defending position against Greg Murphy. Wills in 17th.
Murph was involved, unfortunately for him, in the incident that I was involved in, and you know, he, like me, was an innocent participant, and he's got the luck of the Kiwis with him because he actually managed to get the car back again. I thought it was fairly how you going, but he got it back and they got it going, which is a great effort by the team's part.
Greg Ross.
Tyre stop here for Stephen Richards. A little bit of drama with the front right. Spoke to Stephen prior to this weekend. He said he's very, 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 very keen on the development that this team will have in the back end of the season for their cars. And incidentally, during the week, this team finalised its endurance lineup. Larry Perkins will not be a driver in that squad come Bathurst. He'll be sitting it out.
Richo comes back in very significantly behind Mark Scaife. And in terms of the top guys, or the guys who've done their stops, he's in about 6th or 7th.
Only 2 drivers so far have done their fuel stop. Rick Kelly, I think Warren Luff's the other one. Oh, that car does not look good, does it? The Stephen Johnson car, all that damage there. He tripped over you.
Yeah, he was another,
the first in the queue.
Another innocent participant, which is a shame. He's been going pretty well. You know, as you know, I rate him very highly, and he's been going very well this week.
I was talking before about, and you made the point, John, when you first arrived, that Rick took that fuel right at the very edge of the fuel window, we would have thought. If we roughly talking about a fuel burn here, about 2 litres a lap, give or take, the way you treat the throttle and the way the team has got the car and the engine configured.
Well, the Kmart team are, you know, fair mavericks when it comes to strategies, and most of the time they work, but their cars are very good on fuel, and I guess they punt on a later pace car when he's got good tyres and he can pass everybody.
Daryl Beattie.
But Todd Kelly was just in for tyres. It was a mediocre sort of stop. But I looked at the tyres that went onto Todd Kelly's car, and they were a lot better than the ones that went onto Glenn Seaton. And that's obviously throughout practice and qualifying. Glenn struggled a little more, and they used up a lot more of their green tyres. The other one that was in was Greg Murphy for his fuel stop.
Some of the teams are warning their drivers to be a little conscious of oil on the circuit. I've just heard the Dick Johnson racing team on the radio. They believe that car 17 may have a cracked diff housing. Perhaps that's explaining what's going on for Steve Johnson.
Yeah, if there's a few drops of that making its way onto the road, then that'll make for some excitement for the boys when they're at the limit under brakes or in the middle of a turn. It doesn't take much, does it, John? That
tiny oil is very, very slippery.
The top side of the berm on the far side. Yep.
Greg?
Well, this is the fuel stop for Garth Tander as Stephen Johnson comes in at the same moment. The DJR crew just a couple of feet behind us here, ready to tackle that car. They parked it in the pit bunker. 12 seconds gone already for Tander, and one of the first to take advantage of the fuel stops here. Here we go for 34.
Well, it's an indication of the pace of Marcus Ambrose. When he fed himself back into the field after his stop, there were 3 or 4 drivers between him and the rest of the guys who've made their stops. They all came out in roughly the same position, but Marcus has built an even bigger lead, I suspect, through traffic here. Noski, Jason Richards and Tony Longhurst between him and Russell Ingall, his teammate.
Sudden bad oversteer there, Lee. Oil.
That's the voice of Stevie Johnson.
Paul Dumbrell yet to make a stop, and Max Wilson. They're the two guys at the top of the order at the moment. They're nearly 6 seconds ahead of Marcus.
Pretty quick compared to Ambrose. I could see him around the track. Yeah.
That sitting in the pit lane there, John, is where the heat's at its worst. You get that huge heat soak up through the floor and no air going through the cockpit right now. It's very uncomfortable in there.
It isn't a very pleasant place to be, but, you know, it's a hot day. The cars are exceptionally hot, as you've mentioned on a number of occasions, and, you know, this is actually quite hard work, and, you know, Stevie's as good as there is out there, and he's obviously been working pretty hard.
You made a very interesting comment on that, JB, just after your birthday recently about the actual the amount of fitness. You train every day?
I don't train every day, no. I train about 4 days a week, but you know, very specific things for motorsport. And Billy, before I was 40, I did not train a day in my life. I thought, why would you want to train? But actually, it makes quite a difference, unfortunately. Means you have to get up early. I don't like that.
I meant to say earlier, you've qualified well. You've certainly raced well. 6th in the championship is terrific. And of course, given the Stone Brothers' dominance, you're the only Ford really outside of that team that has taken the fight to Holden. But this seemed to be your best chance for a really good podium finish for a while.
Like I said, you know, all the positivity in the world doesn't stop someone running into you, does it? You know, in the first corner. But I mean, the team is really progressing. This is my 3rd year with them. They're a terrific group of people, and you know, they all are very dedicated. They gel well together, and you haven't seen the best of us yet. But, you know, today, I mean, it's very disappointing. Everybody out there's had days like this. Neil's had days like this many times because I've seen him have them. So, you know, it's just, you got to just cop it on the chin.
And he never stops talking about him either, I tell you.
We do reminisce a bit over things like this.
That's what happens when you get old, isn't it? 9.5 seconds.
Speak for yourself.
9.5 seconds between Ambrose and Ingle here as that new VY Commodore of Tasman Motorsport and Jason Richards takes its service. Jason Bright in 3rd, so the race is fully unfolding. Brad Jones is in 4th position. Thanks for coming up, JB, in bad circumstances.
I mean, I'm getting the flick, am I?
Apparently.
It's because you mentioned Compton's age. Is that what it was? We'll take a break for the Queensland 300. Jones, Tratt, Wills, Kelly, Radicic and Tander. That's your top 10.
It's quite a heavy smell down here of fire extinguisher foam. How much warning did it give you? It's obviously an airbox fire.
Yeah, we had an airbox fire coming out of pit lane, and you know, must have pushed the throttle a bit much and too much fuel, and it's exploded in the airbox. So I had to drive around, and the throttle was sticking, and obviously a lot of smoke. But I knew I had to get back to the pit lane because that's where all the fire extinguishers were. And luckily the guy's done a good job and put it out before it's done any real damage.
Disappointment for you, given that this was the debut of the brand new car. From a results point of view, you could actually climb the leaderboard a bit after a difficult qualifying.
Yeah, we had a difficult qualifying. It's a difficult car, you know, to set up out of the box, and we learned a lot over the weekend, but we just weren't quick enough in qualifying. During that race, obviously, we picked up a few spots for the guys going out, but look, it was looking okay, and it's just a setback, but I guess you get that with a new car. Better get rid of that before Bathurst, I suppose.
Thanks, Jason.
And just to further explain that, if you use too high a throttle percentage with the pit lane speed limiter on, the cars pop and bang. If they backfire up through the trumpets, it's possible that you can set off a little airbox fire, and generally the airboxes are fiberglass or carbon fibre, and if you set fire to them, you've got a real problem on your hands. A Scaife comes in. These cars looked like they were a real handful for the first couple of laps, and they settled down. Todd did go off a little bit later in the event, but they're still circulating reasonably well at the moment. Darryl.
Mark Scaife in for fuel, Neil. Also, they've got a shock under the right rear. They're pulling the right rear tyre off that car. Looks like there may be some adjustments to the shock. Yeah, quick tune on the run there. I'm just trying to get in and have a bit of a look what's going on.
They're certainly making a shock change, and I'm hearing...
Yeah, they're winding... he looks like he's wound... trying to wind some preload on the top of that spring there, Neil. So Scaife obviously complaining to the right rear in that car. It's all fueled up, right rear going on now, and ready to leave the pit.
And you may think that that's burning a lot of time, but you very often look out, they've got a problem. They've dropped it too quickly before he got the stubby out. Need to lift the car back up and then drop it. So a little bit of confusion there. Jeff saying stop, and Mark was going, and then it was, oh, all right, well, if you're going to go, away you go. So just awkward. And but the amount of time that you burn making that adjustment seems horrendous. But often when you get back on the track, you can really smarten up the performance of the car, and he could have something to fight with, particularly if there's a safety car. Now, there's a bit of nonsense there at turn 2 that we were seeing in the distance. And Murphy, I reckon, is going to park this thing. I heard him complaining bitterly on the radio that the car...
It's just ridiculous. It's fucked all the time.
So...
no need to elaborate on that.
Pretty straightforward.
McFadden in.
And
Craig Baird is in no man's land a bit at the moment. Exits pit lane. He's made his second stop. Daryl Beattie.
Lowndes becoming a bit of a habit, these spending time in the pitch during the race.
Yeah, I don't like talking to you at all, but look, it's lost power, so I don't know whether it's broken an exhaust or dropped a cylinder. I'm not 100% sure, but it's lost power. It's running rough, so the boys elect to take it around and see what we can do and whether we can sort of survive it or salvage it. The next thing is obviously see whether we can do 3/4 of the race distance and score some points for the weekend.
The first stop initially, they pulled one of the ducks out of the front. Was it overheating as well?
It was caught up in traffic, and we were sort of carving through the pack pretty well from with the people I was around. And it did get hot, but whether that was a contributor to what's obviously ultimately gone wrong, I don't know. But we pulled it out to change the car handling slightly. It had a little bit more, it had more understeer through turn 1 and 2, so we had to get around that. But we've been battling the car all weekend. But you look at it's sad to be standing here talking to you.
Thanks, mate. I think your other mate in the commentary box wants you to go and join him.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks, Neil.
Yeah, I'm not talking to him after what he did to us at RPM earlier in the day. It might take me a half a day to get over it.
9 cars have made their second stops, 6 of those for fuel. At the moment, the top 14 cars have made just the one stop. Ambrose with a 13.35 second lead. Noski comes in. First car of those that have made their 2 stops is Russell Ingall down in 15th position.
Bridie's in. This is a critical stop.
Clear entry, mate. Get it over nice and early. Line yourself up with the board and pull up on me.
Again, positioning is critical. Boys do not want to shift the tools. They want the car to stop on the spot. Surface change onto the concrete. Very easy to overshoot. Rusty's on the spot.
Lot of action going on in pit lane at the moment, Neil. Obviously fuel here for Jason Bright. We'll keep an eye on that. Stephen Johnson, full marks to the Dick Johnson Racing Team. They are about to send him back out again. So 16 seconds there for Jason Bright. Quickly, car 20, Jason Barguana is back in action to replace the left-hand top wishbone and the radiator and send him on his way.
It's interesting the comments there before from Craig Lowndes talking about the water temperature rise when he was tucked up behind another car. And you'd be amazed at the effect that the preceding car can have on water temperature. The exit air from the preceding car is very hot, and you often, if you're focusing on the engine water temperature, if it is a little bit marginal, it's possible for it to climb 5 or 10 degrees very easy.
Points go deep through the field, of course, under this system with 192 for the win. So with a field of a high attrition rate, if you can get that car back out there, you might be able to save a fair chunk of your championship.
18.8 seconds, Ambrose to Stephen Richards. Brad Jones is in 3rd position now. You may recall as Scaife goes off and into the weeds, as he buried this thing.
That's not a good spot.
This is turn 1, and I reckon the thing is there to stay. Searching for drive, and it's got no grip out there at all, and there he is, parked awkwardly, which is probably in such a bad spot that it's half a chance to trigger the safety car. I was about to make a comment, and Todd is in for his fuel, that Brad and the full course yellow has been thrown, safety car is out, and Brad took his tyre stop early when JB and the boys were all tangled up at turn 1, so it's a real position now.
Whether you want to put it in or out, I have a bit of trouble with roll on the rear with that run. It's your call. Just look at the time, make a call. Okay, it's time to go away, Marcus.
It's a good stop, this, though. Safety car coming out, good timing. Daryl Beattie's there.
Marcus Ambrose in for fuel. Todd Kelly was in just previously. Interesting, not only took fuel on in that car, but the boys had the rattle gun out for the right front. They were feeling the right front wheel to see if there was any play in it. So some issue in the steering there with Todd Kelly. They waved him out. Ambrose just about taken on all the fuel. About 15.6 seconds compared to Todd Kelly's 17 seconds.
Yeah, if Todd's got any free play in there, or if there's a hub or bearing issue, he'll have brake pad knockoff, and that could explain why he had the excursion at the end of the back straight.
Greg, 18 seconds worth of fuel for Stephen Richards, and it was perfectly timed. Paul Dumbrell came in just as he went out. A tight one there between McConville. I think it's McConville, or it might be Tanner. I'm not sure. McConville, I think.
It's Tander, right behind Brad Jones. Is that what you're referring to?
Too. So yeah, Brad was well positioned. Seaton's in. Bradley came in third. He's showing 7th at the moment. Cito's taking his second stop, and full course yellow means that a whole bunch of people will use the opportunity to try and get their servicing done and ticked.
Well, Marcus Ambrose is in great shape here. He'll maintain a very healthy buffer on teammate Russell Ingall, who made his second stop earlier under full pace, and that's Scaife's.
It's hard to explain that one, isn't it? I mean, he's just fired off on his own unless there's something on the road. There's a little bit of there was a bit of smoke there. I wonder whether something else has got on the rear tyres of that car. Well, no doubt we'll find out. There's some onboard stuff here. This is looking rearward from the number 2 car. I don't reckon. I think it's just maybe got on the dirty stuff there.
So
there she stays.
This winter of discontent continues for Mark Scaife. Unbelievable. Once again, a front row start. Once again, a very disappointing finish. We'll take a break here. Marcus Ambrose, just over the midway point of this race, has a very good hold on it.
At turn 1. More to the story.
They're nose to tail. There's a group of them, nose to tail, fighting each other. I'm talking about the drivers of DNF to try to get in the commentary box right now. And John Bowe was nudged out of the way, and now Craig Lowndes has jumped in. There are so many people available to talk to us today. I feel sorry for them, but at the same time gives us a breather. Craig, difficult race for you yet again.
Well, yes, it was, Billy. It's look, we've had a pretty terrible weekend in the sense of trying to get a car set up. We're not quite happy with obviously the way it went, but look, we're making progress. We had a good battle there with Rick Kelly there for a while, and Jason and my old teammate Glenn Seaton was around us. We made a pit stop, and we had to make some changes to the front of the car, which took us some of the aero away. So it had more understeer when I resumed racing. But looking at some of these cars and the battle scars, it's quite amazing. That turn 1 was quite an instant Bowie.
Glenn's in 11th place, incidentally, and of course with the safety car has a chance to actually rub some panels with Todd Kelly in front of him and Anthony Trapp behind him, and just up ahead is Paul Dumbrell. There's some interesting names in the top 10. Simon Wills another, and Brad Jones doing very well. Daryl Beatty.
Well, Mark, I visit you for the wrong reasons a lot lately. I want to be the first on the scene when it comes good.
Yeah, I mean, it just it's broken a left-hand rear hub. And as soon as I turned the wheel, it just bolted. So it's got a heap of play, a heap of travel in the left-hand rear suspension and outside rear axle stuff. So yeah, I mean, a bit of bad luck with that one. But I mean, it will change for us, Daryl, I hope.
Is that why originally you came in on that stop before and you made some adjustment to the right rear? Was that maybe trying to compensate that problem?
Well, it was a bit oversteery, yeah, a bit more oversteery than we would have liked straight away. And obviously that's just been getting worse and worse and worse. It's actually chucking oil out now, so it's probably been chucking oil on the left-hand rear tyre also. So, because I said to the boys, it's different from left to right. The car was quite good in the infield, but too oversteery in the fast stuff.
As a positive, is there a new jigger turning up for this next race?
Well, we're certainly building one. I don't know whether we'll get it ready for the next one, but when Winton's our test track, we know that the car will go pretty good there, but disappointing result for us because, you know, when you qualify up there, I've said now too many times, you're going to get a result at some point.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, mate.
3 years in a row that he hasn't had a result at this place. I tell you, he looks speedy at the moment as Pride, and so does Ingall. And if anything, I reckon Marcus is getting a bit of a tough break with the traffic here and there. He's not getting through them. It's allowing these two guys to get right in touch with him. This is the battle for the lead.
I'll tell you what is noticeable too, Neil, and I'm not sure if it's caused by traffic, but Stephen Richards seems to be just struggling to keep up with those guys a little bit. He's nearly 2 seconds down as we look at some of the heavier contact here. This is how Bradley found himself off the circuit. You would have seen that
with Simon Wills. It took him a while to find a slot to get going again.
That is a shame. He was working his way through the field and very strongly positioned.
Winterbottom and Craig Baird not too far out in the weeds, so he gathers it up again. It'll drop sort of 10 seconds and disappears in a cloud of dust. And I've never ever seen it as dry here. It's staggering.
Well, it is a trouble with vision. I'm not sure, Craig, how much. We'll have another look at this before we start talking about that. Well,
and didn't look pretty.
No, Craig Baird's been chasing Mark Winterbottom there for a couple of laps, but whether he's just got a bit impatient. But yeah, definitely tagged the back of the car and turned him around. But they resume racing. The Marcus here is got a little gap over Russell. Craig Baird now is splitting these two guys, and then Stephen Richards, I think that is, it's caught up to the back of Bridie, so it's getting very close at the front.
And Tander's in there as well. This is all for position. These guys are battling away here.
Craig's Baird, that is a lap down. But,
but Ambrose, Ingle, Bright, yes. Richards, Tander. Tander was talking about in 5th position, so he's right in the game, so he'll be encouraged by that.
Craig will have to, that is, Baird will have to, I keep saying that because Craig's in the commentary box with us, but Baird will have to watch himself a little bit in the middle of all this because... I'm
feeling race control might be visiting the other Craig shortly.
Yes, Garth is pushing through very strongly here, involved in this battle. Race lap record set here in 1999, a 1:11.0033.
I'm sure Bridie be getting a little bit anxious to get past Craig Baird. Being a lap down and having these other two piranhas on his tail, I'm sure he want to get past these traffic and get on with it.
You see Marcus catching that thing then through the middle of the turn. A lot of attitude on the car, so... I tell you what, there's some carnage out there, isn't there? This thing of Richo's all smeared up as well.
I'm sure if Marcus wants some of our understeer through that turn, he can have
it. Could actually sell him a bit.
We can swap a bit.
Maybe you could trade it.
Ben does the right thing here and gives racing room to the three guys who are ahead of him by a lap.
You could trade in understeer and oversteer futures, couldn't you? Bridie, big slide, and Richo straight down the inside, and Tander's in there as well. So changing the brake balance, so some people are really getting in strife here big time at the moment. Oh, and he's been tagged. Garth just touched the back of Bridie into turn 6.
Don't panic, mate.
Craig, very bumpy down that main straight, but all around the circuit, and it seems to get more so every year.
Well, it does. Here's a replay going into turn 4. Now, this is a corner. There's not a lot of straight between 4 and 5, but Bridie, as you can see, is just drifted really wide. Allowed Stevie Richards just to dive up the inside. Oh, definitely a tag there with Garth, probably right on the limit of adhesion. But once your rear tyres go off here, you do lose lap time, lap speed. As you can see, Garth's just monstering the back of Bridie here, and you just got to be patient. There's a couple of places where you can pass, but you just got to be patient and get past cleanly.
And it's still a long way to go in this motor race, so right now is not the time to get overly aggressive.
Just a reminder that after the Formula 1 telecast tonight from Manucor, we'll bring you MotoGP, the Rio Grand Prix, and those two hard-working, sweaty individuals down in pit lane, Rust and Beattie, will be recovering sufficiently to call that race as Paul Morris.
He's taking the short shoot between turns 3 and 6. So there you go, gearbox drama for the Sirame entry. And
tested strongly here the other day, Greg.
Guys, just to quickly update you, it sounded like Rob Crawford on the radio just a lap or two ago to Rick Kelly. Some concern about him perhaps not obeying the blue flags given the competitors that are around car 15 at the moment. Track temperature has dropped off a little bit too. There's some cloud cover that's moved in and it's dropped off. It got as high as 35 degrees on track. The ambient got up to 33, but it's dipped to 28 degrees ambient, 31 on the track at the moment.
Yeah, which is an amazing winter temperature. There's a lot of garbage on this road out there. There's cars leaking oil, there's fluids everywhere, there's dirt and dust and debris. This is a real challenge for these guys to make sure that they keep it clean.
This bloke running into a bit of traffic, Marcus Ambrose, but he's managed to get almost a second on his teammate Russell Ingall. That might evaporate pretty quickly now. Stephen Richards, though, 1.5 seconds further back. He seems to be struggling to keep up with the Stone Brothers cars. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll have more from the Queensland 300.
We are live on Shell Helix Motorsport at the Queensland Raceway, moving into the closing stages now of the Queensland 300. The Australians still in a commercial break, so John McIntyre, Stone Brothers Racing, giving all the teams a lesson on how to get around.
They certainly are. They've managed to turn all their testing and practice around there into results so far, and they're certainly heading the way.
Talk about testing and results. It's not always the case, though. It is a deceptively tough circuit. Teams have tested well here, but it doesn't necessarily translate into race results.
That's right. There's 3 or 4 Queensland teams who have been there in the last few weeks and have recorded some really good lap times, but most of them are nowhere when it comes to race day.
So Marcus Ambrose is our race leader as we go back to our commentators at the Queensland Raceway.
You're back to the Queensland 300. He's out on the dirt, and he'll be dirty about that. He is just digging it in and bouncing back onto the circuit, but it's lost track position. Now Russell Ingall also in stripe, but he didn't quite get as far as Jason.
And I think the reason for that is the preceding Triple Eight entry of Max Wilson's dropping a bit of fluid on the road. He's just gone off on it. And I think this is the rearward view of Russell getting out in the weeds here. Unfortunately, he didn't actually go off onto the dirt, but he gathers it back up, but drops 2 critical spots in the process. And meanwhile, his teammate Marcus Ambrose now out to 3.1 seconds over Stephen Richards. Garth Tander, who looks very strong today. Ingall 4th, Bright, Wills, Radisich, Dumbrell, Seaton in the top 10 in the other FPR entry.
Don't forget
Todd Kelly. Let's go back downstairs to Darryl.
Yeah, Neil, if you have a close look at that car, as even prior to Max's stop as well earlier on, every time it goes around a right-hander, as you can see there now, something's coming out the left-hand side of it. A lot of right-handers here, but it's quite noticeable right now.
So Wilson struggles around. His teammate Paul Radisich is 7th in the race, just behind Simon Wills. And then we've got Dumbrell, Glenn Seaton. Great drive from him. And then Todd Kelly in 10th position.
Was there much of a difference in the setup between both your cars, Craig, yours and Glenn's?
A little bit. There's something that both Glenn tried a direction this morning and I tried a direction, and we both come up with the same sort of answer to what the car was doing. So really we elected to go slightly different for the race. And as I said, both cars were pretty identical in lap times and speed.
Richo,
Jason, yeah, Stevie.
12.9 last lap for Glenn. He's in 9th, and 12.5 last lap, nearly 12.6 for Ambrose. So he's about 0.3 a lap slower. I would say that's probably not too bad.
Well, no, it's not. But really, obviously, we'd like to qualify a lot further up the grid and keep out of the traffic and the harm. And really, we're lucky both of us got through turn 1. I know JB was sidelined and a few others, but really, we were lucky. We both went bush. And something that I remember, it was like I said to the boys, I remember it was like days and thunder as I was going through the smoke. I could see Bradley Jones's car spinning in front of me, and it just happened to get out of the way as I was coming past. So
yeah, John Bow out in turn 1 together with Steve Ellery. Dale Breed was in there. Stevie Johnson, if you've just joined us, Greg Murphy sidelined as well, and they repaired the car and got him out and subsequently parked it. And Paul Wheel had a clutch problem, I think, from memory. So 6 cars were out right at the very beginning of the race.
So it is amazing. We knew it was going to be 90 laps around here, which is almost a double stint of the old 500. So most of the drivers physically can do it, but it is mentally tough. You make sure that you drive it very straight, as you can see, and as you've seen with some cars running wide, there's a lot of debris, a lot of rubber. There's a very fine line on a race line, and then you can get off that, and it's very slippery and dusty. So these guys are doing a great job.
Anybody's ever seen it quite so grubby, and obviously when a car does go off CL, it's very easy to drag the garbage back on the road.
Well, it is, and it's a headache or it's a problem for oncoming traffic to obviously to go through it and clean it up before you get around for the next lap. But as you can see, there's great battles going on right through here. Garth Tander's car looks extremely good. He's just harassing Stevie Richards. But really, Garth seems to be motoring along really well.
Well, I was just checking there. One interesting thing is that Ambrose made his tyre stop on lap 33. Stevie Richards made his 2 laps later, so there shouldn't be a great difference there. But Garth made his tyre stop much later than both of them. And maybe that might be helping him a little bit with fresher rubber than the 2 guys ahead of him. He made his tyre stop on lap 49. My eyes are going on me.
Well, it looks like they're all on a similar strategy, which is really to bolt the tyres on first, get some good fast laps going on. Simon Wells is he's coming in. Looks like he's got some drama out the back.
Copy that.
But yeah, really put the tyres on first in the middle of the, or the first stop.
He was in 6th.
Yeah, it's stopping. I told you, I can't even get top gear in a straight line. The thing's making huge noise. Okay, copy that.
Not good. Not good at all, especially around here. But if you put your first set of your first pit stop, you put your tyres on, you get the bonus of having light fuel, good tyres, and doing very good quick lap times, which a lot of these guys seem to have done. And then as the race goes on, obviously you put the amount of fuel you need on to the finish of the race.
Greg. Well, Simon Wills's dramas are good news for Cameron McConville, and for your outfit, Gary Rogers, it may not have had the best of qualifying. They're both in the top 11 now, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it is great, Greg. I mean, it's been a tough couple of years, or 18 months anyway, but we've gone back to a few basic principles. Life's pretty basic, but we seem to complicate it. We've got the good old team back from 2000, and look, it's not over yet, but it's certainly, you know, heading in the right direction, and it's very, very pleasing.
Overnight, was there a rethink perhaps on settings for the car, particularly for the race?
No, not really, Greg. I mean, we're okay yesterday, but we just got onto it a whisker too late for qualifying with Gard's car. And to be fair to Cameron, we really mucked him over. We put the setup in the car that we thought was right. We didn't corner weight it, which was a mistake on my part. But, you know, we moved on from that, and hopefully we've learned from it.
Still a way to go. Thanks, Gav.
Thanks, Greg.
Well, Cameron was lucky to qualify 6th at Barbagallo, and I say that because it was a rain-interrupted session. He did finish 6th in the first race there, but apart from that first race, he hasn't finished better than 17th all season. So to finish 11th here in a pretty hard charging scramble.
Well, he needed that good result in Perth, and unfortunately it went away from him, and it's been tough for him this season. We spent some time with him on Friday, and a very fit young bloke, and some dramas for him obviously also in terms of scrutineering at a previous event, because they found that the crankshaft in that car was underweight, and they docked more points out of his championship, which is the last thing he needed. And it's been a bit of a character building year for him so far.
Ambrose lead 3.5 seconds over Stephen Richards, and it'll be interesting to see just what Richo can do. But Marcus hasn't been able to clear out here. Richo's been hanging in, so the closing laps of this race, and there are 22 of them, will be very interesting indeed. And we talked about the pace of Tander. He's pressuring Richo, although there's about half a second in that battle. And then we've got Russell Ingall, who had a few problems, remember, after running wide. He's now 3.27 seconds further back. And then we've got Bright Radicic Dumbrell, who is doing great things there for Larry Perkins, justifying his faith. So far, Glenn Seaton in 8th place, then Todd Kelly and Tony Longhurst, who has been scrounging around there, Tony. Best result, 13th. He's done that 3 times this year, and his qualifying performance has been well below that. He's rarely shown pace in the qualifying, but in most races he's managed to finish much higher than his qualifying position. So a good, solid performance from a very experienced driver. And we're about to be joined by Mr. Scaife. I don't know how he's feeling right now. We'll soon find out. Craig Lowndes, thank you very much for joining us here in the commentary box. And you can go off and have a cup of tea and a biscuit.
Just take a ticket and sit down for a minute. We'll be with you in just a moment.
Yeah, JB and I'll go sit in the corner.
He's part of a very long queue here this afternoon. And Neil McFadden there, not in that queue. He's still out in the race, which is to be commended. 14th position, actually, with 114 points. Not bad for his first run this year in the top level. As we say goodbye to Craig Lowndes and thank him very much, a quick reminder. Oh, Neil McFadden. Well, I put the kiss of death on him, didn't I? Quick shot of Neil, a nice wrap, and some of those 114 points are going to disappear, and maybe all of them if he can't get back on the circuit properly and in good shape. It looks like he will. Bit of dust being shaken out there. And V8 Superstars will return to your screens after the Oran Park round. It'll be at the Star City showroom. Tickets go on sale Monday, July 12, as we take another look at Neil's mishap. And like so many cars, the left front there, lifting almost off the circuit as he overcooks it and turns it around. Back in the heat of battle. Winterbottom there, putting some pressure on. We'll give you details on how to get tickets and who to ring. Keep watching RPM. we'll let you know all the details and who's on the panel. But right now, Marcus Ambrose's lead is increased by half a second. It is 4 seconds over Stephen Richards. And Stephen Richards has managed to hold off Garth Tander for now. That gap has gone out to 0.7. We'll take a break from the Queensland 300. When we come back, we'll have a chat with Mark Skaife. And in the thick of the battle up front, and speaking of that, Marcus Ambrose's lead, as you can see, is now out to 4.5 seconds. Richards has been able to make no ground, but neither has Tander. He's lost ground on Stephen. That gap out to more than 2 seconds now, and the gap between Tander and Ingle is 4 seconds.
I want to welcome another guy into the commentary box now, Billy, who certainly doesn't want to be here. It's the third time in a row at this event things have gone wrong. Welcome is the wrong phrase, really, Scapey, but another ugly afternoon.
Yeah, not the best, Crompo. We had a left-hand rear hub failure, and you know, we've had a couple of little engine dramas in the last couple of years here, so we haven't had the best finishing record at this place, but certainly another testing day.
You and I were just talking about the fact that the track speed at the moment is way slow compared to previous years, and normally later in this race it starts to rubber up and the speeds are pretty handsome, but there's a lot of debris on the road. People have been making mistakes. Cito's having a pretty good run in 8th position in the FPR car, but it's been a bit of an eye-opener, and the rhythm change from the 3 sprint races to this one long race, and a lot of traffic complications, a lot of garbage on the road. Quite a few people have been trapped by that.
Yeah, it's actually an unusual condition. I think the ambient temperature is higher than we would have thought. The track temperature also in the early 30s. There is definitely more debris. I think we've had probably more brake fade this year for everyone. Everyone's complaining about the brake.
Why do you reckon that is?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know. Maybe we're actually demanding more of them in terms of the way that we're approaching this time. But definitely, you're right. This time last year, we were doing mid to late 11s, and like a 11.4, 11.5 was the first sort of stint style time. So although Marcus has done 11.7 and Bright the fastest there with 11.6, it's not a consistent pace. I mean, Jason at the moment, they're in the early 13s. Yeah. We're probably mid-12s at this time last year was a good time. So it's at least 3/4 of a second slower.
Last time through, one of the Orcon cars bellowing smoke here as well. Tyre rubbing on the right rear by the sound of it. And last time through, Marcus was a 12.8, Richo was a 12.9, Tander 13 flat, Ingle 13.1. Margin is 5 seconds, Marcus to Stephen Richards.
On the next part of the lap, there's a car with an engine gone.
And encouraging performance so far today from Paul Dumbrell. We had a shot of him there before in 7th position. And also encouraging for Glenn Seaton inside the top 10 after his teammate out with an engine drama, so Seaton's into 8th place. Tony Longhurst, who's had a bit of a character-building season coming back to V8 Supercar, also inside the top 10 in 9th position. And your teammate Mark is in 10th position at the moment in car 22. So we'll listen to this. Russell Ingle, turn 4. The last lap, 0.7 slower than his teammate Marcus Ambrose, who leads the race. And you can just tell, Mark, by the rhythm of the car as Walden goes off up the top of the circuit near pit-in, that there's not a lot of grip out there. He's braking pretty early and not a lot of mid-corner pace either. It's the walking wounded for a lot of these guys at this point in the day.
It certainly is. It's not Crompo, not just about tyre quality. What actually happens is the tyre goes away with the brake. So when that happens, the front brake fades, it ends up very rearish, and because the cars haven't got diffs in them and they run a spool, so both rear wheels are doing the same speeds, as soon as it starts to lock the rear brakes, it's like putting the handbrake on a normal road car. So you arrive at all the braking areas with the rear wheels locked and you struggle to make it in, and as the tyres go away, that gets exaggerated. So you can tell by Russell, it wasn't a flowing, nice car to drive. It certainly struggled to make the corner at the end of the main straight.
P4. That front bar's about to come off that Triple A car.
See the obvious problem with Max Wilson's car there. And he is down in 14th position at the moment.
Crompo, that is a good drive, young Paul Dumbrell, and you know, where he qualified, what was it, 14th or 15th or something?
17th.
Yeah. So that's a good drive, 10 spots, and
he's been in the wars, so this is a bit of sugar for him. He probably needs that confidence boost, and he took himself off to Rob Wilson's school overseas to just tidy up and brush up on a few things, and he's kept his nose clean so far this afternoon, and there's a little bit of a scar on the front of it, but no big deal. It's probably in the opening couple of corners with all that duck and dive stuff that was going on, but good effort.
It is a good effort, absolutely, and the other guy obviously is Glenn Seaton. They've had a shocking run also, and for Cito to be up there in the top 10, right behind Dumbrell, actually, it's a bit of a battle. It's great.
Yeah, well, those two are pushing up on Paul Radicic there, so it's one of the closest groups actually in the race at the moment, and fighting for some pretty handy points.
And the other bloke that just has dug himself out amazingly, and you've had him partner you to a Bathurst victory, Marcus, Tony Longhurst. He started 33rd and he's now 9th. Now that's a recovery.
He's a good racer, and he does a really good job at this place. He flows the car well. He doesn't use it up too hard. He's good with the tyres, and as the race goes on, he's pretty fit also. You know, TL, he keeps himself in good order. So at this point of the race, the cabin temperature is very, very high. If the ambient there is 30, 31 or whatever, probably now the cabin temperature is early 50s, mid 50s. So by this stage, you know you've done a fair day's work.
And Winterbottom off at turn 3, I think.
Okay, mate, just hang there.
Voice of Mark Larkham on the radio.
9 laps to go. It's been a very ordinary day for that.
That's thrown a full course yellow.
Safety car, stand by.
Well,
awkward spot for that car to be parked facing the oncoming traffic.
Well, this gives them a crack at Marcus again, a sprint to the line, and that'll make it very interesting. He's obviously had good car speed throughout the race, so and overtaking him is not going to be easy, but it brightens this race up with 9 laps to go.
The good part about this one is that car will come out of there pretty quickly, so it'll be a pretty short safety car period. Everyone will be trying to get to keep their tyres in good order, because what happens is, with the amount of debris on the road that Neil was referring to before, it won't take very much to get, when the tyres are at that temperature, to get small chunks of rubber and dirt and stuff on there. So it makes it very interesting when you come back to race speed.
We'll take a break here at the Queensland 300. When we come back, it won't be unlike the sort of racing we've seen in the previous few rounds. An absolute sprint between some very quick cars and keen drivers.
Safety car, and the Australians still in their commercial break, so we won't be able to rejoin their commentators just yet. But a good sprint in line for the finish.
Definitely. It seems the same way every year with Queensland. It's a little bit strung out to start with, and as the track goes away and more and more cars come into the equation, poor old Ambrose, it seems every year, has to do the same thing. He's led the whole thing, and then they all bunch up behind him.
Well, the lights are out on the safety car, so it won't be long before we are underway again, with Marcus Ambrose in front, Stephen Richards, Garth Tander, Russell Ingall, who is Ambrose's teammate, tucked in 4th place. Jason Bright, hasn't he run into form recently? He's holding 5th, and the leading New Zealander, Paul Radicic, is 6th, Paul Dumbrell 7, Glenn Seaton, then Longhurst, Todd Kelly, McConville and Tratt. But it is all set up now for a big finish. Another day of what-ifs, though, John, for Mark Scaife.
Absolutely, he obviously doesn't like being in the commentary box, and yeah, they've certainly got a lot of work to do to try and bring their performance up.
Disappointing day for Mark Scaife. as the car's trailing round behind the safety car. And yes, a big sprint lining up for the finish, the Queensland 300, live on Shell Helix Motorsport. A shame in a way, though, a race defined by the accidents on the opening lap.
Absolutely, and we saw, you know, Greg Murphy, but some of the also the front runners like John Bell were taken out early, so it's a bit of a shame, but you know, that's racing, I guess.
So Stephen Ellery also among those who lost out on race 1, as we go back now to our commentators at the Queensland Raceway.
Here we go, the restart now, and what a sprint to the finish. Can they catch Marcus Ambrose going into turn 1? Richo right behind him now. Ambrose had that nice 5-second buffer, but they're all jammed up. And I guess Mark Scape and Neil Crompton, this is the time when they must attack.
Well, this will be on for young and old now. The only time that we'll be able to have a go here is into turn 3. And probably they're a bit wounded, I think, Crompo.
Yeah, I mean, the whole race has been very surprising in the number of people that have got damage and made mistakes and things that have broken. Just the rhythm of this motor race has been very different to those in the recent past. And I think at the end of the day, Marcus has got just a tiny speed buffer and will keep him in reasonable shape. The lap that we're on now, as you said before, is the lap where he's at major vulnerability, you know, where the tyres have pressured down and cooled out slightly, and if someone was close enough, they might be able to just niggle him into a blue, but his car's been strong. None of the guys, in fact, have ended up being that close on this critical lap for varying reasons.
It's strange, isn't it? I mean, there's a 2 or 3 car length gap, basically, the whole of that lap, and I actually thought that Garth was the guy that would have had a dive, because in championship land, he's probably got the most to gain, and I thought, you know, he's probably the danger man of that pack.
See, Marcus 12.9 last lap, but Richo 13.4, Tander 13.2, Ingle 13.4, Bright 13.5, Radicic 14.3, Dumbrell 14.3. These guys have just, there's just no, either no grip available or they've run out of brakes or whatever, but for whatever reason, they don't have any great lap pace.
Richo's car was squirming around there a little more than the others, as we remind you that the next round of the AFL sees some tremendous games on your Saturday home of AFL. But Marcus looks in pretty good shape here. Only 5 laps to go now. No one's had a major attack, and Richo's often stated conservatism when it comes to the championship points might be a factor here as well. He has 6 points to gain by attacking Marcus, but a heck of a lot more to lose. A couple of lap drivers down there in the middle of that pack too, you might have noticed. Wilson is certainly one and McFadden's another.
This lap will be a bit closer. I think the guys actually have taken a little bit of ground out of Marcus then. Marcus was 5 or 6 tenths on the first lap, and 13.07, 13.23, 13.27, 13.30, 13.4. So all those top 5 cars there within 3 tenths of a second.
Mark Noski overtook before the control line on the restart as well, so he'll cop a drive-through penalty in the WPS Ford car number 48. There, the sector times in that last lap suggested that everybody else's cars normalised to the point, or their pressures at least, normalised to the point where their cars came back into phase again, Mark. And here we go, McFadden off in car 14. Team Dynamic entry.
Keep it blazing, mate.
Yeah, gas her up.
Give it up.
It looks like Crompo at the rally in Tassie.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Oh, there's no dam. Where's the dam? Where's the dam?
You beat. Tell me all about your left rear hub seal.
That was a pole lap Scaper. You beat me by a 1/10 of a second to that line.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Mark Scape. We'll look forward to talking to you in the next round.
You make one mistake, Crompo.
That's right.
That's like the old saying, but we can't repeat it.
That's right.
Marcus Ambrose by nearly a second now. Here's how McFadden found his way into the dirt. Under a bit of pressure there. Dumbrell.
Oh. It's going quite fast when she rotated there.
12.8 for Marcus, 13 flat for Stephen. It's a 1 second margin first to second. That's what it looks like. And Stephen's car, its body language suggesting he's right on the very limit of the rear tyre through turn 2, and Garth is just ready if there's even the tiniest mistake.
Those top 5 guys there, Crompo, are driving the cars really, really well. I mean, when you watch them come out of turn 2 then, and this is Stevie working pretty hard at this time of the race, when the tyres are like that and the brakes are ordinary, you are so close to going off the road everywhere. and you use every inch of road that's available to you, but you're trying to take all the load off the car and trying to sneak it and flow it and trying to make the front tyre do as much work as possible. And when you watch them at last lap, they were really into it.
And especially at that turn 2, you know, you kind of, there's always that level of impatience there where you think it's time to get on with it with the throttle, and it's generally the worst thing to do then. You've got to try and make that front left work harder than the left rear.
These lap times this time will be incredibly close. 12.76, 12.79, 12.88, 13 dead and 12.9 for the top 5 cars. So all of them again within 0.2 of a second.
Jason Bright hasn't quite had the pace this weekend that he's had in recent rounds as a race car, and he was good in qualifying, obviously, not quite so strong in the shootout. Your Todd Kelly there crossed up a bit through turn 1. So
Todd's got some brake drama going. We're a bit of front brake debate. I was just talking to the guys before I come up, so he's struggling at the moment, just trying to get it to the end and score some points.
10th at the moment, 138 of those points. Looked like a fair bit of temperature going inside the... You could actually see temperature on the rotor then, I reckon, inside Todd's car.
I'd say he's working it pretty hard, Cropper.
It might have been an illusion, but it looked like they were getting pretty warm. There they are.
Yeah, they are. They're all lit up. Good work. Your old eyes are still all right. Not real good in the rally, but other than that, they're all right.
Righto, one more and you're out, OK?
It looked like those advertising lights they used to have on the Champ cars when they came up with that idea.
You are going to get it, you soon. You wait till after this show.
Ambrose has had a wonderful preparation for this race. He played in the Queensland Masters Pro-Am golf tournament, finished midfield. He's really mad at his golf lately, and...
2 laps to go, Mel. 2 laps to go.
Mate, you need bigger front brake ducts on that thing.
Yeah, thank you for that technical tip.
Bit of armchair engineering. Yeah, nothing
right.
like it, is there?
You should have spent more time listening to your navigator than doing it. That's
righto, that's it. Gone. There must be a fader in the truck somewhere where we can close. Thank you, goodbye. 1.5 seconds, Marcus Ambrose to Stephen Richards, and the pressure's off Marcus now. He's got the job done. He just has to drive the car straight.
Garth Tander's done well of that top major point scoring group. He's picked up 9 positions, you would have noticed, and Bradley Jones, even though you might recall he was off the track and lost a few positions, he still gained plenty on his qualifying. So not a bad result all up for Aussie Male, given that Bow in such a strong position was out of the race before he even completed a lap.
He's driven very well, hasn't he? You can see he's using all the road. He's got it nice and straight. He's done the job there at the restart. There would have been a couple of really hard, tough laps to do there. And here's Bridie attacking Ingle right here at the end. 2 laps to go, final lap now.
It might just be a positional change here, but Russell will make that car as wide as possible.
There's another 12.7 for Marcus. These two disputing 4th, 13.4 for Ingle. So he's really just barely hanging on at the moment.
Every point counts for Jason. He's had a terrific year. He hasn't been able to convert qualifying speed into shootout position.
Keep an eye on this, Billy. Only a few corners to run for these guys now, and Russell's right on the very edge with that Caltex car.
So Russell might be able to hang in now.
Yeah, that was probably the spot. If there was going to be anything happen, that was it. Gee, he certainly had it on his fingertips in turns 1 and 2. Look at this, Bridie's got speed at turn 4 and 5. And if he gets a reasonable exit out of here, he might have a look at turn 6, but I don't think he's going to be close enough here, Ines.
No, he's lost a car length or a car length and a half, and that's the critical part there. You just can't get the job done at the end. You just can't make up that time at that point proper.
Marcus Ambrose gets the job done.
A victory.
Great job, Marcus. Great job. Nice to get a win at home.
Pole position and victory.
Yeah, thanks, boys. It's bloody very important race, that. Great. Fantastic car, Paul. The race was tough, but I'll tell you that last safety car. Whoa. Thanks for watching, Jimmy.
Don't forget, last year he had a drive-through penalty here and his teammate managed to win the race. So Marcus bounces back, takes a stronger hold on the championship. Richards there alongside him. A solid result for him, keeps him in the game. Garth Tander finishing 3rd ahead of Russell Ingles. So the usual suspects are up there. Jason Bright won't be too severely damaged by his 168 points. If he hadn't had a bit of a letdown at Eastern Creek, he would have been right up there with the top couple. Paul Radicic, Paul Dumbrell, congratulations to him, and indeed the other Castrol Perkins run car, Tony Longhurst, 7th and 8th for them. And Todd Kelly, solid result for HRT on another difficult weekend, finishing 9th. And Cameron McConville breaking into the top 10 for Gary Rogers. And that makes a very good result for that team. So we're looking at the top 10 here. Some notable performances outside that top 10 as well. And the spread's not too bad either, 16 seconds at the end of the 280 Ks. But Anthony Tratt finished 11th in this race, and Bradley Jones finished 12th. That's a very good performance as we start to look at these guys. Glenn Seaton.
What happened to Cito? Because he was inside the top 10.